Round 19?
No.
Round 18
Yes.
is in the books, Jesse. Oh, God. I'm already looking ahead to the tips already. My goodness me. Thank you for joining us again on YouTube and on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. As always, if you're listening to the podcast version, at @CMPerfect_AFL, if you'd like to comment and leave your thoughts on the round that was. Jesse, interesting round, this one that's just happened. We had some really cracking games. We had potentially what was one of the worst games in existence. What were your thoughts on this round?
Well, it was contenders round this week with a lot of the good sides playing a lot of the other good sides, and we're never speaking of the other Saturday night game again because that feels illegal to put that on, and I'm so grateful that despite Essendon still getting primetime games, they had the decency to fixture a Fremantle home game on at exactly the same time. So in no way, shape or form could my Saturday night be ruined by other teams. It could only be ruined by my own, which thankfully also didn't happen.
It was a good Saturday night all round, Jesse. But no, unfortunately, we do have to talk about that game. We will get to that in just a second. But I know. But as we do, we always start on Thursday nights. Let's rock and roll. Thursday, July 10th at Marvel Stadium. Carlton 9-12-66 going down to the Lions 15-13, 103 in front of a fairly healthy 33,000 odd at Marvel. Not too bad. They're still turning up for the Blues, aren't they? The fans. God, hopefully one of these days they'll give them something to cheer about. Your thoughts on this one, Jesse? Bit of a smacking.
Well, not only are the Carlton fans turning up for their team, but you're turning up for our YouTube viewers, Liam. Look at these new graphics you've got going on here for our YouTube friends. A nice little sleek design there. Very nice.
Thank you.
But Carlton not turning up on field, which is crucial. So Liam sometimes doesn't turn up when it comes to remembering players' names.
Anything.
Carlton seems to forget to turn up when it comes to kicking goals or doing things. Yeah. They were dreadful once again. Mark Pitner kicked a great goal. Oh. Do you remember anything else that any other Carlton player did that was remotely good? I don't. Patrick Cripps was slightly better this week. That's nice. But no, Brisbane were, after that freakish Pitner goal, and wasn't it just that, complete and utter domination here from the Lions. This reads as a 40-ish point margin. It felt like a 70-ish point game in effect. And while that doesn't mean anything in the context of who actually won and by how much or percentages, it gives you a sense of how far off the pace Carlton are and how desperate the need is for on-field change to be effected. For the record, there's off-field change that needs to happen at Carlton. There's on-field change that needs to happen at Carlton. I don't necessarily think that change needs to happen in the coach's box. Because you look at the effort and you look at the individual accountability moments of Carlton players, it's non-existent. Yeah. A lot of the time. It's a lot of time. It's 22 players playing for themselves. Pitnet stood up. He wants that number one ruck spot next season, which is, we can do a ruck deep dive in a couple of weeks, Liam, if you would be so inclined. We could talk about the ruck situation across the competition, but there could be a lot of dominoes falling this season, of course, feeding back to our deep dive from this week. But Pitnet's standing up here to be counted, and Brisbane probably don't have that strong of a ruck division themselves at the moment. I mean, they've got serviceable players. McInerney and Fort can do that job reasonably well, but I think I would put Pitnet in a similar bracket to that, and he really did stand up when it mattered for Carlton, but unfortunately, not a lot of other players went with him.
No, and look, for Carlton, when you're bad, you're bad, right? When you're bad, you're bad. More in front of goal, absolutely dismal. Absolutely dismal. Haven't kicked more goals than behinds since round 11, Jesse. So now coming up to 7 weeks in a row where they can't put
there'd be a buy in there.
Oh, well, you know what I mean, though.
Yes, but you're talking calendar months.
Calendar months. Just between putting them through the big sticks cannot do. What's going on there, Jesse? What's happening?
Well, where's Charlie Curnow?
Where is Charlie Curnow? What's he doing?
He's on the field.
Yeah, the commentators still love him. That's for sure. Every time he does anything of remote worth, wow, they go bananas. But no, he's been rather poor, Charlie. Where do you think his head's at? What's going on? I'm actually not asking you where his head's at.
Dr. Jesse, PhD in psychology. No, look, I think to keep this brief, I think Curnow is just so devoid of confidence in a team devoid of confidence that every moment kicking for goal in front of a home crowd especially feels like climbing Everest, and that just takes a toll. And Mackay's been through that at Carlton. Curnow seems to be going through that now. I think Curnow can come out of it a better player in 2026, but I don't think you're going to see market improvement for the back half of this, or back end of this season for Charlie Curnow. I think he might get goals here and there, But I think for now, it's just a case of, honestly, just get through the games. I'm not saying rest him or drop him. Just get through the games, get out of the other side of it, hopefully stay injury-free, and try again next year.
Yeah, fair shot. Let's move on, Jesse, to Friday night footy. Yeah, the Suns get in. The Suns 10-9-69, defeating the Collingwood Magpies 8-15-63 in front of a very healthy 22,000 at People First Stadium. Probably been a minute. They had to get the catering sorted for that one because they would have had a couple of hot chips. Not enough.
Had to call the Tweed Head fish and chip shops and get them flung over the border.
That's right. That's right. No, but it's nice to see a big crowd at People First Stadium. Not something we're used to seeing. Obviously, the Collingwood fans had a lot to do with that. And unfortunately, they saw their team go down to a very, very impressive Suns outfit, Jesse.
Yeah, they were. What a game this was.
Oh, it was great.
If I could pick game of the season in round 18, I'd be nominating this. Recency bias be damned. This was this had everything.
Everything.
It had team very good for a long period of time. Really good team bad. Really big Victorian team bad. That's a lot of ha-has in that first sentence. All of a sudden, that team's really good again. Oh no, they're going to overrun the plucky underdogs. Until they didn't.
Yeah.
Until they didn't. Josh Dacos, that last quarter speaks for itself. That was unbelievable. 82 fantasy points in the last quarter, Liam. Just dominated. Matt Rowell, Noah Anderson, the big boys stood up for Gold Coast when it mattered. And I just want to talk about Ben King very briefly. He was solid all game. I don't think he had a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, but his repeat efforts in that last 45 seconds to deny Quainer an easy exit for Collingwood, that's what won Gold Coast the game and saw them get 4 points and not 2. For your big key forward to be doing that, tick, 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 I would just be adding whatever he wants on that contract extension, because he's out of contract next year. We talked about that last week. Mm-hmm. I'd be look, honestly, whatever he wants.
Yeah.
This 100%. Is the guy. This isn't a Tom DeConey situation. This is an Oscar Allen situation. He's your whatever you want guy in the competition right now. And Collingwood, they'd be saying the same thing. How can we get Ben King to Victoria Park? Gold Coast need to be saying, how do we keep him at People First?
Yeah, good place for him to be in, that's for sure. I mean, I watched this game on replay because I was out about on Friday night, and you said to me, Liam, watch this whole game. So I got home at like 9:30, 10 p.m. and watched this entire game, and I was stunned that Collingwood hadn't even put a goal on the board until halfway through the third quarter. I was stunned.
Very funny.
It was very funny.
And then it became unfunny very quickly when they started being very good again.
Look, both teams gave it their all, undoubtedly. The Suns finished plus 16 in the 1%ers, though, a massive part of that of that win for sure. But it's just desperation, wasn't it, Jesse? It was the desperation that proved the difference. And we said this at the time when we were discussing this game on Friday or on Saturday, doesn't matter. Most teams, when Collingwood get that run on, that's it. It's over. Game's done. It was nice to see a team kind of put them in their place and stop them dead in their tracks.
It was potentially a season-defining win for the Suns.
Huge. Let's move on to the next game. The first on Saturday, the Western Bulldogs 15-8-98 going down to the Adelaide Crows 16-13, 109 at Marvel Stadium. I think this kind of delivered on a game that we thought it might be. Relatively high scoring. He's shooting. Pew, pew. Pew, pew.
It's a shootout. I just shot you with two guns. It's not really a shootout. More like a shooting.
No, it was amazing to see. It was everything we expected. Obviously, Thilthorpe, 6 goals. Jesus Christ, calm down, Riley.
Straight, too.
What's that?
6 goals straight, no behinds. Just six straight through the big six.
It's because he's very good, Jesse.
That's 36 points.
That is. Your maths is on point.
Isn't maths fun?
It's so on point. Let's talk about some of the Adelaide players first. Let's talk about Dan Curtin, because he's been quite the pickup for the Adelaide Crows. 26 disposals at 81% efficiency. We love efficiency here. We mention it all the time.
Well, we need value out of our efficiency. So he was getting the ball forward, which
you don't want 42 touches and 10% efficiency. No thanks. No. Probably get you 3 Brownlow votes. Not impressing us, though. That's for sure. But also, he affected 8 intercepts as well, Jesse. I mean, that's pretty big. That's pretty big impact. That's
huge impact. And that's the type of stuff that allows teams in high-scoring shootout games, to actually hold on and keep a damn wall up. That's what Curtin's done here for Adelaide. The Hoover Dam wasn't as mighty as Dan Curtin was at times on Saturday for the Crows, a key part in Adelaide's win and really a key part of their future as well. Adelaide's first-round drafting since blowing it in 2019 has been phenomenal. They continue to just get these jets. I'm really starting to believe in this Crows side, both this season and also beyond. Like, this is a team that I was umming and ahhing about making the 8 this season. I don't want to go and put the dynasty curse on them, but this team, based on where they're going trajectory-wise, should be up there for years to come.
They're making a believer out of you, Jesse.
They are.
Making a believer. What about the Dogs?
In fact, if you made me pick a 2026 Premiership favourite right now, I'd say the Crows.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad shout either. Wouldn't be a bad shout by any stretch. What about the Dogs, Jesse? They've kind of fallen back outside the 8 again, which is just happenstance for how close it is in that kind of bracket. But they haven't really beaten any top teams this year, I don't believe. Anyone in the top 8.
And it's getting to be a problem. I've resisted calling this a major issue a lot because, draws are funny. AFL has nuance. Players come in and out of form and injury. But it is starting to become a problem. They've run a couple of teams close. They were close against Fremantle. They were close against the Crows, obviously, here. But they're not getting it done. And right now, I do think they'll make the 8. I still think the Dogs will make the 8. I still think the 2 that you're worried about are now the Giants and Fremantle. I think they're the 2.
Yep.
Of which one will not make the 8. But I'm now starting to get concerned about what are they going to do. I still think they are phenomenally dangerous, but you can't deny data. And that's where we're at with the Dogs, is they are losing games against the good sides at an alarming rate in the context of how are they going to affect September.
Yep, fair shout. Let's move on, Jesse, to the next game at NG Stadium. I've got lots of question marks in there for the crowd because they wouldn't tell us. They never do. The Giants 17-9. What's that?
Probably for the best.
Actually, it was apparently a pretty good crowd. 17-9, 111 for the Giants, defeating the Geelong Cats 13-7, 85. What's to say about this one, Jesse?
Cadman.
That
third quarter was unbelievable. He just took that game by the scruff of his neck and said, no, thanks. I would not only like a contract extension because I watched the Same Perfect AFL podcast and he got one of those. But he also just completely dominated. And you can start to see the transition now for the Giants. And you can see it in the best you've nominated there, Leave Me For on YouTube. But that is Cadman, Callaghan and Whitfield. So Whitfield's 250 gamer now. He's been a Giant through and through for a very long time. But look at this young breed coming through. Tom Green is continuing to have a fantastic season. Callaghan, Green and Callaghan in the mids for the next 5-10 years. That's terrifying. And Cadman up forward, taking on that Jesse Hogan mantle. Not Jesse Hogan mantle, as in where he was at Fremantle, but where Jesse Hogan sits on the mantle. He's taking that on with aplomb. And, Toby Green's not going to be around forever. Jake Stringer had probably his best game in Orange as well, which is fantastic. Disappointing for the Cats, though. Giants have done a double on them now. I expected more from Geelong here. Not sounding the panic stations just yet. It could just be a case of this is their bogey team, which is fine if they can avoid them in September, but they will have to answer some hard questions if they don't.
100%. Dangerfield has been okay this season. A bit of a horror show for him this weekend. Just 3 behinds from 7 disposals and only attended 5 centre bounces. A bit of a change of form from the last few weeks, Jesse. Anything to worry about with old Danger here?
I think in isolation, no, but I wouldn't want to see those type of numbers with any level of consistency. Not at this point of the season.
No. Anything else to say about the Geelong Cats, Jesse? Any players that stood out to you?
I mean, Smith is still on track to be top 3 to top 1 of a Brownlow medal at the moment. And Shannon Neal, the Tom Hawkins clone experiment is working.
Yeah.
And he's still very good at football. Probably the biggest and most notable example of him stepping up over Jeremy Cameron and being the focal point of Geelong's attack. So even in a loss for the Cats, there is positives to take.
Absolutely. I mean, it's Geelong. There's always positives for Geelong. Let's move on, Jesse, to the game of the round. Oh, God. Okay. To be fair, okay, Richmond...
No,
Richmond's,
there's no to being fair here.
No, wait a second. Hear me out. 6-10-46 to the Tigers, getting the win over the Bombers, 4-13-37 in lovely conditions at the MCG. Well, apparently not. We'll get to that in a second. But 52,000 for this game is actually pretty decent. It's a shame. It's a shame that they got served up what they did. Apparently, Jesse, it was all to do with the vortex at one side of the ground. The vortex, Jesse. Did you hear about the vortex?
I would like to offer something.
Okay, offer it up.
And I don't know how this is going to work,
okay,
but I'm going to offer it.
I can't wait.
I would like to exchange all footage of this game for any of the close grand finals from 1900 to 1930.
Oh, okay.
Because I would rather sit through that where handballs weren't really a thing and people just kind of slowly lumped the ball forward, ran for a bit, picked up ball, looked around.
Mm-hmm.
That's Bob Pratt. I'd rather see that than ever think or look or contemplate round 18 Richmond versus Essendon ever again in my life.
Yeah.
Let's do positives though, because we can't just sit here and bash. This is a great win and a character building win for Richmond. I said this in Just the Tips, Liam. I said if Richmond get up for this is a winnable game for the Tigers if they get up for it and they want to be there and want to fight.
Yep.
They wanted to fight, they wanted to be there, and they got the job done. I thought Jonty Fall got the reward in the end, but he worked so hard all day in difficult conditions for key forwards. Taranto had a great game. You know, I'm pretty critical of Taranto at times on this show. I don't often see the value he adds, but he was crucial to this win, and I'll give him his flowers for that. Jaden Short, that was a real, I was going to say game-defining goal that he got, because it swung the momentum for 55 minutes at a point when no one wanted to take that honour away from his being last goal scorer. Jaden, that was such a good goal. Mm-hmm. You could have that last goal in the AFL app for 55 minutes. But we can't do positives. Is there a positive for Essendon? They've kicked 4 goals against 17th. They looked horrendous. The Bomberometer was at a 2. Richmond were at a 5. And they've still won. They also stopped, having led for most of the game, owing to just no goals being scored. This is a disaster. I think it's time to ask questions about Brad Scott. You can talk about the outs. You can talk about the injuries. And, you know, it's a real shame about Nick Martin's ACL as well. But
big shame.
You're getting out-coached by a relatively new coach and a very young side. You know, that's an issue of both leaders. And I think McGrath and Merritt are not blameless in this loss. Mm-hmm. But you've also got to look at what's happening up in that coach's box. I would be very, very apprehensive about Brad Scott's long-term future with performance like this. This is horrible. Yeah. This is one of the worst performances from any team all season. And we have historically poor West Coast and children Richmond to baseline that against. And they were just horrible, the Bombers. They were awful.
I mean, they had +9 inside 50s, though. That's pretty good.
The margin's 9 points.
I know. Isn't
the
that
other
funny?
way.
Isn't how funny stats work sometimes? No, I think you've said it all, Jesse. I think there's not much more to say about this game because it was terrible. I did watch the mini for this, and it's usually 18 minutes long. 12 minutes was the first quarter.
Was the inside 50s the only stat you wanted to bring up for that one, Liam?
Well, -22 on the 1%ers as well for the Bombers.
That's inexcusable.
But what are they doing, though? What are they doing?
Maybe that's not a Brad Scott issue. That's an on-field leadership issue there. That's an actual want to win games and want to be there. Yeah. -22. I think they only had about 30 in total, Essendon, on the 1% account. So to lose by that margin, and in a stat that doesn't matter who's on the field, you could have a team of VFL players. If you're getting beaten by 22 1%ers, that's not necessarily a skill issue. That's a commitment issue. That's the most alarming point out of all this for me, Liam. That is a horrific stat for Essendon fans to hear.
For a game that we weren't going to speak about much, we sure did well, Jesse. Let's move on to the next game, which is a nice game to watch. Yay.
We don't do brevity here.
No, we don't. We try. Never works. At Optus Stadium in front of just shy of 50,000, the Dockers 12-5-77, beating the Hawks 9-10-64. Neither of us saw this coming, and we're both very, very happy. Listen, I know we usually get on board with like talking about Dockers first because yada, it's our team, yada, yada, yada. Shut up. Sam Switkowski, Jesse. Hot dog. What a game that man. We've missed his presence on the field. There's really nothing more to say about it. He's one of the most underrated players in the competition, I say.
He's the extension cord, isn't he? You don't know how much you need him until he's not there.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy, Jesse. It's a very good analogy. But it kind of he's a team lifter, right? So obviously Brayshaw had a cracking match and with 14 tackles himself. But I just wanted to touch on this. 103 tackles for the Dockers. Highest of any team this season, which is not something we've really seen too much of Freo in the last little bit. Just that want and that drive. Sure, we've won what's that? 6 out of the last 7 now.
7 of the last 8.
7 of the last.
But also 6 out of the last 7 is equally true.
That is yours is more true, Jesse.
And they're equally true. They're both statements of objective fact that can't be disputed based on data.
All right, mate. All right, calm down, data man. Relax.
We just don't make false statements. Now you've made an untruth. That's hard to do.
I'm very good at it, though. Without even trying sometimes, most of the time. Now I've lost my train of thought, Jesse. What was I going to say? I've lost it. Tell us about the game.
The Sam Darcy hype train?
Sam Darcy hype train.
Wrong platform.
Right.
Let's talk Hawks though. Lloyd Meek was fantastic, clear best on ground for Hawthorn. It's obviously hard to see players you've had come through and go out of your club do well without being, But I'm not bitter about Lloyd. Lloyd's one I'm actually really happy to see do well. He was brilliant. Eamon was a rebound 50 machine for the Hawks. Really looked damaging. It looks like it hurt them. And Judovin had a great game as well. Really looked up and at them. Kal Shadir as well. Give him his flowers too. He was a clear problem for Fremantle all night. Thankfully, they're up to quell Marbia Chol. Otherwise, that could have been a very different result.
Yep, 100%. Marbia was missing in action on Saturday night, thankfully. A player who has had a bit of a rough season but had a good game was Luke Ryan as well for the Dockers. A bit down. 11 intercept possessions, though, which was huge. You called him the quarterback before. I quite like that. 5 marks, 5 tackles. Just kind of, he was the general. They call him the general sometimes, and this showed why.
Yeah, I do wish he was generally standing on the goal line instead of fighting Nick Watson for one of Hawthorn's goals, because that was really silly. I think I called it Auskick levels.
Yeah,
and I stand by that.
Yeah, you weren't happy at that little moment, Jesse. You weren't happy at all.
Not happy at all. What I was really happy with, though, was Matt Johnson's game. And Johnson is the whipping boy currently for Fremantle.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because I don't want to say Fremantle fans have a lack of understanding about how football works, because that's mean. But the more I see it, the more I start to think it's true. Because Johnson isn't in there to be a crystal clean user of the ball, a distributor, in the sense that, you're going to have classy players like Geordie Clark hitting targets from 50 out. Johnson is a crush and bash utility. Didn't attend any centre bounces on Saturday night. Still came over with 20 disposals, 9 tackles, a couple of inside 50s. His disposal efficiency wasn't great, down to 52%, and he does need to improve that. No one is denying that, and he still can freeze at times, but we just forget this kid's barely played 50 games. I will say this every week on the show. I think he is a clear long-term best 22 player for Fremantle. I wish more of the fan base would get on board with that, because you don't want to drive a kid like Matt Johnson away, hound him out of the club, and then see him go and become clear best 22 at a good side, because he absolutely has that in him.
Yeah. 100%. No, it was a good gutsy win for the Dockers, and they desperately needed it on the back of last week. Keeps them in contention, which is always nice. Let's move on, Jesse, to Sunday. I'm on the screen. To Sunday. Here we go. Interesting game, this one. The D's 18-11, 119, defeating the North Melbourne Kangaroos 12-11, 83. It was a pretty good back and forth battle for the most part, this game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Margin probably doesn't quite do North justice. I thought this was a pretty good game. The best we've seen Melbourne play all season. Now, on one hand, you'd say, well, that's against North. That's not particularly amazing. But I do think this was a really welcome sign of Melbourne. I have been harsh on the Demons this season. I have said I'm really concerned about where they're going. I'm concerned about their list. What I saw from them on Sunday was just a glimmer of hope they are trending in the right direction. I know there's going to be an immediate return to contending, but looking at some of these teams down the bottom with them, so you're talking Carlton, Essendon, St Kilda. That's in that 12th to 15th bracket. Of those 4, I would say Melbourne or St Kilda have the most amount of upside next season, and I have more faith in Melbourne's processes to go and get that done. So, few ticks for me. Fritsch was really good. Petrarca had a good game, but they're still getting these games into the youngsters, and the youngsters are responding too. So, but hasn't Melksham turned into a goal-scoring machine lately, Liam? He's really put the searches on it and been a valuable part of Melbourne's offense.
No, he definitely has, Jesse. 4 goals or more in 4 games, including his last 3. In a season to forget for Melbourne, he stood up and provided some crucial offense, especially in these dire times, like you're just saying before, how they're starting to show some signs, and probably something they needed. A little bit more gumption up forward, hey? All right, let's move on, Jesse, to the next game. The Swans, Jesse, they're still in it. They've won again. They've won again. St Kilda 13-9, 87. Going down to the Swans 14-8, 92. Look, I didn't get it as much this time. There wasn't as much, goings on. I think after 301, I think everyone was like, okay, that was a team that the Swans were going to catch. They kind of calmed it down a little bit. But I thought the Saints had this kind of in the bag for most of this game, and then the Swans kind of pinched it from at the end.
Well, it was a hot start and a hot finish for the Swans, which has been 2 areas the Saints have struggled with at times, and I think that they're still clearly starting to have those issues. But a lot of leaders stood up for St Kilda. I thought Wilkie had a really good game down back for them as well. But Marcus Windhager, for a guy that gets unfairly segmented as just a tagger and the guy that knees Nick Dacos in the hamstrings, he was excellent, and he is a very good 2-way player. I would go as far to say one of the most underrated players in the competition. I'm a big Windhager believer, just purely because he, in a good side, which unfortunately St Kilda aren't quite yet, in a good side, he is exactly what you need to let freakishly good players like Wanganeen Miller potentially shine. Because he can accumulate, he can distribute, he can do things at both ends, but he doesn't need to be the glory guy. That can be Wanganeen Miller. That could be, if he was at Collingwood, that could be Nick Dacos. Like you're talking, he allows the elite players to be superstars. To thrive. But look, some players aren't thriving at the moment at St Kilda. There's a few passengers there. I think right now, Liam Henry, struggling. Brad Hill. Brad Hill actually had a good game, but he's at the point now where every mistake he makes is under such a big microscope that it's hard for him to function. Their forward line's still not quite there. Higgins has gone missing again. The back half of his season has been so poor for St Kilda, and yet, despite being a horrific win-loss record of 5-12, only 2 points clear of North, only 4 points clear of Richmond, so they could finish 17th this season. That's not out of the question. They've been good on field. They've been a 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th on field if they could finish off games and if they could execute those moments. But right now, Liam, some players, both previous elite players and not, are just letting them down.
Yeah, they definitely are. I mean, on the Sydney side of things, Grundy towelled up Brian Marshall, who's been okay for the Saints for the last few years, but
he's been even this year.
Yeah, even this year, that's right. But does this add a little extra element for the TDK talk about the TDK coming to the Saints, just to kind of cover this potential Rowan Marshall fall? It's not even a fall. That's not even fair in itself. But does it validate some of those desires? Jesse?
Well, you're looking to replace him if you bring in DeConing. And I think Marshall's within his rights to seek opportunities elsewhere if he can't be the number one ruckman at St Kilda, because there is an argument to say he is still good enough to be a number one ruck in the competition, but not off that performance. He was absolutely towed up by Grundy, and I guess the icing on the cake is the match-winning tap by Grundy for the match-winning goal. That makes it hard. It makes it very, very hard for St Kilda. They're going to have to make a hard decision this offseason, because I don't see the point in keeping Marshall if you're bringing in DeConing. Like, he's on good coin there, so they're going to have to dump him somewhere. It's an awkward situation all around. I don't think St Kilda have quite realised the layers to this contract of DeConing in the context of Marshall, Wanganeen Miller, guys like Windhager, really promising. You don't want to get to a point where Taru is a breakout star defender, and he didn't have a fantastic game, but he still looks really damaging in the air. But you don't want him to get to a point where you say, right, well, he's now $1 million a season player, but your money's committed elsewhere, which is a weird thing to say about St Kilda, because they've had that war chest trademark for so long now, but they've actually got a couple of really promising elite level potential players, which they haven't had for a while, I feel. And I'm not putting Max King in that bracket. I'm putting Wanganeen Miller. I'll throw Windhager in, and I'll put potentially Taru off what we've seen. So this needs to be priority one for the Saints, locking down the players they've got in the backyard and keeping that happy. So whether Marshall is just done, that could be true, but I wouldn't be looking to a $1.7 million man to replace him.
You've missed the point, Jesse. Rossi's looked at J-Lo's plan of having 2 rucks. He's thought, yes, please, let's get that done. Right? Let's move on to the last game. Unless you want to say something about that quip, Jesse.
You floored me by the thought that anyone would take coaching advice from Justin Longmuir to the point where I'm actually ready to talk about Port Adelaide versus West Coast to finish off the round.
All right, let's do it. Adelaide Oval. We've got Port Adelaide 12-15-87, defeating the West Coast Eagles 9-7-61. In what was a very spirited effort from the Eagles.
It was.
Unfortunately, just at the end there, it tapered off, as it tends to do, unfortunately, for them. But I'll tell you what, they gave it a red-hot crack, did they not?
That first half was brilliant from West Coast. They dominated not only on the scoreboard, but they actually dominated the game, which we haven't seen very much of with West Coast. Which, when they've won one game for the year, you kind of say, well, no kidding, like, obviously. But this is a positive sign. And this is the type of things you want to see when you look at a coach like McQualter, who really has an unsackable position. I think there's no other coach safer than Andrew McQualter in the AFL right now because of what he's got at his disposal. He's got nothing at the moment. From senior play, he's got nothing. And he's going to have to build up. You look at the names in your 3 best there. You've got Harry Edwards, who is an immersion defender, although I think you'd like that smother on the goal line attempt back that really did put the game beyond West Coast reach at the end. You've got Cole, who's a role player. We said West Coast should be keeping him. And Harley Reid, who is the future of West Coast in many ways, or certainly the hope to be the future at West Coast. So they've got little pieces. I think Shanahan's continuing to improve. I like where West Coast are going, and I like McQualter's game plan. These results are disappointing when you look at the lead they had versus the result they got. But it's important to keep perspective. You know, they do need to win more than one game a season. That can't be left unsaid.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a significant step in the right direction off a couple of very poor performances.
I think a lot of it is the conditioning as well. They're going pretty hard for the game, and by the time that fourth quarter comes around, that's when they seem to lose a lot of their steam, unfortunately, especially in this game, more or less. But Reed isn't the best, but we have to talk about something. Last week's thumbnail was, I think, a little bit controversial for the YouTube channel anyway.
The Clanger Kings.
The Clanger Kings, and I had Harley Reid on there with his nice little crown on. Season high.
Why is he the Clanger King, Liam?
Well, he equaled the season high of 12 clangers this game. He was already the single game season and average clangerer for 2025.
So he already had 12 clangers in a game, he just said, I would like another one of those. I'd like a second serving, please.
More clangers, please. Clang, clang, clang. And I'm not too sure. I mean, Paul were getting in his head as well.
Oh, yeah.
Big time. Like, it was so easy to do.
It takes a lot for Horn, Francis, and Butters to be the ones you look at and say, wow, they're being the funny ones. They're doing the ha-has. They're not annoying me and my team. Unless you're a West Coast fan, in which case you're probably getting really cross. And I totally get that. And if they were doing the ha-has to Caleb Sarong, I'd probably be getting really cross too. So I get it.
Yeah, but I mean, look, he was good. He had a bit more presence in the game.
I think it's his best game potentially of his career.
Yeah, it was really, really good. But yeah, those clangers, Harley, calm down.
He's got to get the free kicks against out of his game. And yes, we've talked about this. He is umpired differently. That's not, I think, a controversial take. I know. But it is important to recognise there are reasons for that. And while it's not inherently fair, it's where Harley Reid is. The only person to get himself out of this is Harley Reid. Yeah. So the media narrative won't change that. Press conferences won't change that. Please explain to the AFL won't change that. Rightly or wrongly, Harley Reid will have to modify his game style to get the most out of himself.
Yep. What about Port, Jesse, before we finish up? Anything to...
I mean, it's hard to, write home across the 7 seasons and say, look what we've found. We found gold because they beat West Coast by 26 points. The Ken Hinkley era is very slowly disintegrating. It's like a soft plastic at Port at the moment. It feels like it's been 300 years since they announced the succession plan, and it's still sticking out of my garden, and it won't go away. But they need it to go away as soon as possible because the club just needs to move on. And right now they're in an awful holding pattern that no one really wants to be in. If they lose Butters, I actually am worried about Port because I think this list as it is now is quite a good one. But I'm really worried about the off-field noise and the cohesion of this team. If they do get Wangan and Miller, though, that's a complete 180.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. 100%. That'll do it for today, Jesse, for the game review. Send the lovely people home.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. If you're on YouTube, please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed what you saw. If you're on one of our preferred podcasting platforms, please leave a review. We always appreciate the feedback, positive or constructive, coming through from all of you. But the best type of review, Len, that people can give us is a review via one of these, word of mouth. So please, if you are enjoying the show, consider telling your friends, telling your family, getting down to the local pub and saying, I don't want to watch Fox Footy, get bounce off, this is garbage, saying, give me the smart TV that gives me YouTube access and plop this on. I don't think they need a license to have YouTube. So look, hello, if you're watching this at the Leopold Hotel or the Hyde Park Hotel or Young and Jackson's in Melbourne, you've done well, you've succeeded in your mission. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast.
Bye, everybody.